So, continuing our red flag chat.
Continuing our
Anything
red
else?
flag chat.
Yeah. Or
Your turn.
just anything you want to talk about, really. So this is a bit of a rambly one,
Yeah.
but we'll get there. So a red flag for me, for a manager or like somebody who's superior to you that you're reporting to, and it wouldn't be like me to point out red flags about managers and people managers,
No, I'm
but
glad you never do that.
no, 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 no. Very understanding, very patient. And so, when you're, say, in a meeting and you make a point or a comment about something like, I think we should do this or that, and the manager's like, oh, no, I don't think we should do that. And then you're in another meeting with a superior, and you're presenting whatever you were talking about, and that superior to your manager makes the same point you did. And
Yes.
then your manager will be like, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll never acknowledge that you have already brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
They will just say, yeah, that's a great idea. And then it'll never be spoken of again. They'll never say, like, oh, like, I know you said that already. Like, that was a great idea. Sorry, I didn't pick up on it. Or, that was a really great point. I didn't think that actually would work, but it seems like, yeah, it would. So
Mm-hmm.
that really annoys me. Just the not acknowledging it and then kind of like pretending you never said it and kind of not
Yeah.
giving you credit for like a good idea. Or even saying in the meeting, like, oh, that's an idea that, Jennifer had
Yeah.
already. So, we're really on the same page. So that's a red flag. That really annoys me.
And you know what? If there's any managers watching, you will literally, it's such low hanging fruit to correct
Yeah.
this because I couldn't tell you the countless times this has happened to me, but
Mm-hmm.
I 100% remember the person and the incidents of the person who corrected this for me. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember I was new into senior management. I was actually, no, I was new into like executive management,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd be in meetings and we'd be strategizing. And a lot of the times I would like make these recommendations and have these ideas and just not really listen to. And then this other particular person would say the same thing and they were like, yeah, that's great. Let's try that. Let's just give that a go. And I would be fuming and honestly just raging. Anyway, new person starts also in these meetings with us now. He would then be like, oh yeah, so like that's what Jen said a few days ago, or oh yeah, that's what like Jen
Oh,
had that
wow.
idea. It's like, oh yeah, like I mean Jen said that to us 6 months ago, so and that started happening, and all of a sudden the incidents died down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You just need somebody with the cojones to point it out.
Because the thing
And
is like as most people in this position know, and again, this happens disproportionately to women, but it can happen to anybody. It's again a power imbalance thing as much as anything else. But it's you look like a crazy person when you try to defend yourself, and that's like the worst thing about it.
yep,
Yeah.
that's
It's like if you say I that was my idea, you sound
oh, you
petty and
can.
childish. And so
You
it's
can't.
really hard to deal with yourself, you know.
Yeah.
There are some ways though, we talk about trying to come up with solutions. There are some ways to deal with it if you're in this situation and it does involve you being a little bit petty as well. But you know what? Fire with fire.
Yeah.
Um it's saying things like, oh, that's really I love that you're building
On
on
my
my
idea.
idea from last. That's a great one. That's a great
So
one.
passive aggressive,
Yeah.
but I love it.
You'd
I
be
love
like,
it.
oh, Leslie, I said, or you could say, it's like, oh, Leslie, I said, when I suggested that last week, I think that you've done a good job of articulating my idea better than I could
Mm-hmm.
have. That's a great one too. So like you can
Oh,
say it without saying
yeah.
like that was my idea because then you do sound like
Yeah.
you genuinely do you sound childish petty,
Yeah.
rightly or wrongly. But like if you say, oh yeah, thanks Leslie, you've
Mm.
articulated my idea from last week, I think a little bit better. It's glad to see that everybody's on board with that now.
Thanks for trying to steal my thunder, Leslie, but I'm gonna
So
clap
that's
back.
that's a great one. It's like, oh yeah, you did a great job of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
love how you're building on my idea. I love how you're explaining
Exactly.
what
You
I
have to
what
come
I
across as
suggested last week.
genuinely
Yeah.
positive about it, even though you're
Yes.
definitely not genuinely positive.
This is the thing. You have to be like you can't if you go on
Yeah,
the defensive, it looks bad. But if you're like, I love how you've
yeah,
explained my idea from last week, I think that really articulates it well. And I love that now
yeah.
everybody's on board with it. Like
Mm-hmm. And while that
um
might come across as disingenuous, you're really just trying to fight fire with fire, really, because if you
yeah.
continue in that direction with that person doing that over and over again, it will just erode your confidence and you'll probably hate the place you work. And so, yeah, you have to address it. And if that's the way they're going to do it, you're going to have to come up with a way, but that looks positive for you and, just a very eloquent way to do it, kind of not get one up on them, but just not be a bigger person either. But you know what I mean? Kind of like,
Yeah, you do both.
what they're Yeah.
Like,
So
and the thing is, if it is a good idea, you kind of want to see it happen anyway. So it's, you'd be wanting to push
yeah.
that forward, right? Regardless. And the instinct is to just disagree then because it's only right then.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and even things like, I do remember one time I did use that, like I had gotten to the point and I had said, oh, I love how you articulated it. I think when I mentioned that last week, I didn't explain it as well. So this is great. I'm happy now that people are on board. That if anybody here needs like any more information as to how I came to this conclusion, like let me know. I've got like I can talk about my thought process and like the data to back it up.
Oh my God. I love it.
Yes,
I
which
love
is
it.
true. And this is the thing. Like we're kind of being like, like that's funny. And sure, it is. It can get your point across, which I think is important. It makes you seem very professional, which I think is important. It continues to push your idea forward, which if it's a good idea in the first place, that's important. And it kind of shows that you're willing to be like, you have a certain amount of like, you're magnanimous, right? In a lot of ways. And it can actually,
Yeah.
it's a lot more effective than just saying, hey, he stole my idea, right?
Yeah.
Oh, here's a little mini sub red flag of that one, because I've actually encountered this one as well, is when people do that, and it's not because they're actively stealing your idea, it's because they never actually listen to you. And so they genuinely think they've come up with that idea by yourself, even though you suggested it to them several times.
Yeah, they probably subconsciously heard you or as well, or they weren't really listening, but it was in their mind. And then whatever somebody else said kind of made them remember what you had said, which sometimes can be genuine, and that they forgot you said it, or not so genuine if they weren't even listening in the first place and you really care what you have to say. It just depends on the person. And if you've seen that type of behavior before, you can probably tell whether the person's being genuine about it or not. But I think that's one of the causes of like the most unhappiness in work, or kind of like anger, is like not getting credit for the things that you've done or suggested. It really kind of builds up that anger in people to want to leave, or just maybe not put as much effort in. You're like, why am I even sharing these good ideas when I'm not getting credit for them and somebody else is, and somebody else is making themselves look, way better without giving me any acknowledgement for, helping them, or even giving them the idea to begin with, which it's so prevalent. And I've come across it a lot with direct managers, where they just completely, even if it's like they know that that they know, but they just don't say it. Like there's an unspoken.
We all have like a, like an inner sense of justice and fairness, right? And I think when that gets challenged and there's not really, you don't have a lot of control in it, like that can lead to a lot of real like built up frustration that has nowhere to go. And it creates a lot of resentment and it creates bad morale. So
it really does. Even one so I don't understand why a manager wouldn't want to acknowledge that their report had done something well, right? It, again, you said it's motivational and it just creates a better environment for everybody,
it's insecurity, I think, a lot. So there are some people out there that think if their employees are doing something great that is worthy of praise, that goes outside of your little group, that it somehow makes them look bad because they didn't come up with that idea.
True.
There's an element of like, oh, like if the people who work for me are doing better than me, then that's threaten my position. And they're probably not consciously having those exact train of thought, but it kind of comes from like a rooted insecurity. Or it's someone who's very ambitious, who's like, oh no, this is a great idea, I need to take credit for this, or there's the people who genuinely believe that like it's their job as the manager of a particular team to take credit for everything that the team does, and that's a very old school way of thinking, and there are better ways of managing people now as well.
Any other red flags before we go, because I'm gonna have to go back to work?
Yes, I have. We've talked about this a lot, so we don't need to go into great depth, but culture of urgency.
Oh my God!
You go in and there's always an emergency. There's always like a fire to fight. There's always a something. Everything is like, oh my God, this thing's happening. Everybody jump on this right now. That will happen on occasion in companies all the time, of course. But when it's like every week and every 2 weeks, then to me that's a red flag, because they don't know how to prioritize effectively, or the company's just that bad. So like
constantly chasing their tails, like
yeah, is the company that bad that there genuinely is like a full out emergency, or are they just really bad at prioritizing and or are they just trying to look busy, and so when they're
exactly. I think a
crisis
lot of the times.
managing, it thinks they think it makes them look good. I don't know. There's a lot of different things in there, and so that to me that's a red flag. Is a culture of emergency.
Yeah. And people always want to be seen as like, if I'm really busy and stressed, I'm important and I have like important work to do. So there's multiple different things that could be the driver of that, but it's mental. It's mental. If you start a new job and everything is emergency and everything is, I need this right now, it's not a good sign.
No.
Not a good sign at all. Doesn't really benefit anybody in the long run, or you don't have the right people there to be able to make things more efficient, so therefore nothing has to be an emergency all the time. I don't know. That's why they should hire you to streamline their operations, and then I'll communicate the changes to everybody. And Bob's your uncle. You've got a fully functioning, successful company. So
that's what we do. Yeah, like, call me. I will sort you out.
Yeah. One last red flag before we go. Something that someone mentioned the other day, which has happened to me before, is when someone who's same level as you, mostly, this is when it's most annoying, emails you something and asks you to do it, that it would have taken them less time to do it themselves than to type an email out to ask you to do it, to kind of exert their authority over you, and you're like, why didn't you just do it yourself? So that really annoys me. And it's generally people at the same level as you, because they kind of want to be seen as more senior, or just
they tell other people to do something, it makes them look like they're in charge.
Yeah. Whereas they could just be like, oh, I updated that, it took me 2 seconds, where the email took me a minute to write.
I just thought of like an opposite red flag that's basically the same thing but in reverse, but in the reverse it's also a red flag. Management who always just do it themselves. So
but don't want to delegate.
Normally it's because, and I've like kind of coached some people through this, where they're like, it just, because what you said, like ting the little thing ahead, it just takes longer for me to explain to somebody how to do it and to ask them than it is to just do it myself. Obviously it's a different situation, right, to yours.
Yeah, but someone who's absolutely higher up than you.
So it's either like they're massively overloaded, so like they're literally can't even contemplate delegating because it takes more time, or they're not, like, you have to learn how to delegate and let go and let a certain amount of perfection in when you're managing people. You can't be a perfectionist, because perfectionism is obviously a big driver in that too. But it basically creates, like, I mean, your team don't feel like they're trusted, you're not giving them the appropriate amount of work, you're overloading yourself. That makes you like not a very effective manager, like all of the different things. A different red flag when a lot of the time your manager seems to be doing your job and you're just like, why didn't you give that to me to do? That's like my job. Or could be, I mean. So if you're as a manager, you're not constantly trying to delegate portions of your work to your employees as appropriate, then that is a red flag in a different way.
100%. If you can't trust your employees, that's bad. And if you also are so untrusting that you have to do everything yourself, it doesn't work.
Or you just think you don't have the time. Like, you're just like, I don't have the time to explain it. It's quicker.
And you're not hiring the right employees either, that don't have the kind of common sense or cop on to understand what you're telling them, or you can't explain something to them and they won't get it. Like, you're hired people for specific roles. Surely what you're doing is not so out of the realm of what they know or understand. So why is it that you think that only you can do this, even though you've hired people to support you to do things too? So there's an element of I'm the only one who can do this.
There's a great little graph. Talk about solutions. There's a great little graph, to use, in terms of urgent and important, right? And so things will either be not urgent and not important. They'll be, urgent but not important, important but not urgent, or urgent and important. And so there's like a theory that as like a manager or whatever of people, that the only things you should do are things that are both urgent and important. If it's important but not urgent, then you have the time to explain to somebody else how to do it so they can do it effectively, because it's important, it needs to be done right, but it's not urgent, so you have time. If it's urgent but not important, you can get somebody else to do it because it needs to be done quickly, but if they make a mistake, it's actually okay and they can learn from that because it's not that important. If it's not important and not urgent, you don't do it. Full stop. Nobody does it. That's like,
Critical.
yeah. And if this is kind of also one of the tricks people use for prioritization, because people are like, well, I've got all these things to do, and it's like, okay, well, let's like categorize them into one of these four. And if it's not urgent and important, it's like, well, what do you?
That's
It shouldn't be on your list at all.
yeah, yeah.
Lists shouldn't be exhaustive or non-exhaustive. Sorry. Like it'll be never ending. You should only be dealing with the other three grids, and the other things literally just need to be like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Wow, I've never heard of that. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Got all of my little tool belt.
All my graphs and processes in here and graphs in there.
I know, just pulling it out in Mary Poppins bag. I'm like, you know what? For this,
I created this process last year. Here's one I prepared already.
And it was like when people ask that what I do for work, I'm like, it's really boring, but very important. I think it's interesting, but you don't want to look inside this bag. Don't look.
Just don't look.
It's appropriate. I'll take something out for you. But don't look inside.
Well, that was a great way to close the conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, very insightful. We will be back with more red flags soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think the next one we might do is red flags in job descriptions, like job postings online. We might go and find them and read them out and explain why they're red flags.
Yeah. All right. Well, tune in next time.